What's up? Welcome to another episode of Updates with Mr. Warford. This is for my AP Human Geography people. We're going to go over our assignment on types of diffusion that we had a couple days ago, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our reading quiz that we're going to have on Monday. So, the first part of that assignment that you did a couple days ago was on the Columbian Exchange, and I'm going to go over the answers to those two little excerpts you read about the Columbian Exchange. Part A, you should have been able to recognize relocation diffusion and contagious diffusion. So remember, as you read, there were natural resources, different types of foods, different types of goods that when the Europeans came over to the Americas, they saw that the native people had, and also that the Europeans brought over to the Americas, and they shared or traded these things in some cases. In some cases, the Europeans just took those things from the native people, but either way, those things were being shared across different continents. So relocation would be one, because they physically took something and picked it up and brought it across an ocean to another place. So one of the examples was like potatoes came from South America and went to Ireland, and it became a staple of their diet. So physically they took it and moved it. The other one would be contagious when it talked about disease spreading person to person. That's an example of contagious diffusion. And then part B pretty much exclusively talked about the deaths of native populations due to diseases that came to the Americas, so that would be contagious as well. Let's look at some of these other examples. So part C had a couple different questions. The first one talked about rice and how rice cultivation in Asia moved from community to community, and people learned how to do it and perfect that to make a large staple crop that they could eat. And moving from close community to close community would be another example of contagious. Okay, and the other question was, how did baseball and soccer differ in the types of diffusion? Baseball would be considered more hierarchical, okay, because missionaries and teachers who knew how to play baseball carried the knowledge of the game to people who didn't know it. So in this example, I put quotations around the word important, because it's not that they were important because they were teachers or because they were religious. It was because they came to this area and had some knowledge of something that the other people didn't have, so they took that knowledge and shared it to everybody else. So that'd be hierarchical. Soccer was a little different. You could have said it was relocation or contagious, because it did move person to person, but it also talked about immigrants, and immigrants implies movement. So they moved to another place and just shared it among people that lived around them. So that could be relocation or contagious. And the final one, it talked about the word woke or staying woke, how that was an example of reverse hierarchical. And we really haven't talked about reverse hierarchical too much, but when you think of hierarchical, you think of this top-down approach, right? Someone at the top of some sort of pecking order shares something with people on the lower part of that rung. Reverse is the opposite. It starts from the bottom and goes up. So the term woke was popularized by people, especially in communities like urban areas that were maybe lived in the rougher part of town, or maybe were parts of communities that were historically looked down upon by others, or maybe were victimized by people in authority in those areas. So this idea of staying woke started from the bottom and then moved up in popularity among people of all cultures, among all socioeconomic groups, and it even became popular in things like TV and music. So another example of reverse hierarchical, believe it or not, would be Walmart. You see Walmart stores everywhere across America. They're huge. They have every kind of good you could possibly get. You know, if you can't find it at Walmart, you can't find it anywhere. People say that all the time. Walmart did not start out as this massive conglomerate, this massive industry, these massive superstores across America that make billions of dollars. It started as a little mom and pop shop in Arkansas, a little 5 and dime store owned by a family in Arkansas. And if you look at this isoline map, it shows how these stores and the amount of the stores spread as years went on to all of America. So that's another example of reverse hierarchical. It wasn't some massive supply chain store spreading things to everyone in the United States. It was actually the opposite. It was a mom and pop shop that eventually grew to become this massive industrial thing that we see today. So some things to know about your quiz on Monday. The Unit 1 reading quiz is going to be 10 multiple choice questions on a Google form because we can't be here to do the test face-to-face. It's going to be over pages 1 through 17 only. And I know you're probably thinking to yourself, if we're supposed to read all of Chapter 1, how come we only have one reading quiz? You need to prepare yourself to read pages 18 through 34 by the Unit 1 exam. There will be no reading quiz for the rest of Chapter 1. You'll just need to know that stuff for the exam. So we've only got one reading quiz. It's on Monday, pages 1 through 17. As you work on it, complete the vocab and key questions, okay? Don't wait till the night before to upload your pictures of that stuff, okay? Do it as you go. Don't skim through pages 1 through 17 and then do all the vocab at midnight the night before. Do it as you go. It'll make your life a lot easier, I promise. Some other things to keep in mind. AP Human Geography is based on themes, so don't get overwhelmed by all these examples. You're going to see a ton of examples. It's not really a class that goes chronologically, meaning by time. So it's not like U.S. history you had in 8th grade where you're like, we're going to talk about the 1800s today. We're going to talk about the 1900s in 3 weeks. It talks about a lot of different themes and throws a lot of different examples at you. It's impossible for us to know the background of every example we see because they're about culture, they're about different time periods, they're about history, they're about economics, all this different stuff. So we just have to look at the question and apply our human geography knowledge to it, use our context clues to get the correct answer. So read the question carefully. And on our reading quizzes, I don't do a lot of trick questions. It's not like what was the picture on page 4. It's more about the main themes of the chapter. So let's look at this example. So a world map, a map of the world, showing where Islam is dominant would highlight the Middle East, but not America. But there are millions of Muslims in America. This problem shows the importance of geographers to look at A. Reference maps, B. Different scales, C. Cultural differences, D. Proportional symbol maps, or E. Space-time compression. The answer to this would be different scales because, remember we talked about towards the beginning of the year, how when you look at different scales of maps, you're going to notice different trends. So this one says, sometimes you'll notice different trends. So this one says a world map shows you that most people that practice Islam live in the Middle East. But I'm sure if you were to change the scale, you would see that in places around the world, people practice Islam. So it might change your perception of something when you change the scale. So that's an example of using your context clues. You may not have known that the majority of people that practice Islam live in the Middle East. You may not have known that millions of people in America practice Islam. But if you use your context clues and your human geo knowledge, you'll do well. So today what I want you to do, complete the 5 practice questions in the Google form that I put in Google Classroom today to get prepped for that reading quiz on Monday. Study for your reading quiz on Monday and then work on any vocab or key questions. I'll be available if you have anything for me. Peace.